This is the first time I've ever worked with actors that I've asked to do accents before. Both of them are British. And that was actually freeing for me because it became immediately something that was quite theatrical. It wasn't realism because they're actually performing and constructing characters in front of you.
Telling you, I'm very blasé about stars.
What about an evening with Joan Crawford?
I think it would be gigantically boring.
You're probably right.
First, I'm wondering, how you encountered this material, what attracted you to it, and also the process of whittling down that text into what was ultimately the final script.
All the text is verbatim. There's nothing, there's no words that I added that were not spoken between Linda and Peter in December of 1974. And I read the book while I was working with Ben Wishaw in Paris on a film called Passages. I read it, and really by the last page, I thought, oh, I should make a movie of this with Ben. Like that was really the impulse. Ben and I share an interest in queer history and experimentation and a kind of cinema that is maybe non-traditional. So we had this idea to make this almost as an art project, and then over time it became what you see.
Seems like something that could be for the stage, and yet I found it incredibly cinematic, like the way you're able to choreograph, the movement between the characters' bodies and the camera and create these really striking compositions. So I guess I'm wondering, if you could talk a little bit about the work of doing that choreography.
Yeah. The project came together pretty quickly. The money for the film, Rebecca Hall, I met and invited her to collaborate on the film. Westbeth, which is the artist housing in the West Village, established in 1971 as a nonprofit for artists, decided we were mission aligned because we were talking about New York City artists, and they gave us this space in their building for 2 or 3 months. And so all these things seemed like, oh, okay, we're just going to make this film. And then suddenly I thought, how am I going to make this film? In reality, these two people probably sat across a table and talked for an hour and a half. And I realized that was really anti-cinematic. Two things happened. One, I started working with models, like stand-ins for Ben and Rebecca. And we went into the location, which was already becoming an apartment for the shoot. And we started shooting photographs of the two of them at different times of the day in different spaces. So it would be by the window at 12 at noon, and then upstairs with one lamp on at 6 at night, and then on the terrace. And suddenly I saw a series of images in my phone, which I had kept, and I thought, oh, that's the movie. In that process, I also started watching a bunch of films that were made in the 70s and in the 60s, which were very handmade, personal documentary films, experimental films that were portraiture. Films like Shirley Clark's The Portrait of Jason, Andy Warhol's Poor Little Rich Girl. I wanted to be open to be thinking about cinematic portraiture, but really, how do you shoot bodies in time, space, and light? And that became a lot of the questions that I asked as a filmmaker.
So I'm also wondering if in this process you had Peter Hujar's work at the top of mind, because I found that so many of the compositions are really evocative of his photographs, especially when people are lounging or reclining. There's like this great sense of vulnerability, intimacy. So, was that something that you factored in?
I actually, two things that I both were in my mind, but I tried to place in the back of my mind because I didn't want them to be foregrounded, were Peter's photography. Also, the fact that Peter had died 13 years later of AIDS, and that he was one of a large group of people who disappeared from that community because of the decimation of the AIDS epidemic. Both those things were like things I tried not to think about consciously, but allow to be part of the film unconsciously.
I know that Rebecca Hall was able to have these conversations with Linda Rosenkrantz, who she plays, to really nail down that body language. But I'm wondering how you, I guess, opened up the conversation with Linda about, wanting to, work on the script, and if she had any role in developing the film at all.
Rebecca and I both got to know her in a way that I feel like Rebecca really conveyed in the film, because she's one of the kindest people, one of the most curious people that I know. She listens with a kind of active attention that I think is very much what you see in Rebecca. I think Rebecca understood almost more than I did how the film was a love story, was really a story about a friendship between a heterosexual woman and this gay friend of hers who was an artist, and that somehow Rebecca, I feel like, is very responsible for telling that story. I approached Linda on Instagram. I messaged her. I read her book, finished it, and thought, oh, I wonder if I could find her. And I looked on Instagram, and there was Linda Rosencrantz. And we started uh, texting. And then within a week or so, I kind of looked her up biographically and realized that she was at that point 88 years old. And I didn't expect, I don't know, we just had a very easy, I think we actually bonded as descendants of Eastern European Jews. To be honest, there's a way in which I really know Linda. Linda could be my grandmother, only she's much nicer than my grandmother.
So I want to talk a little bit about Ben Wishaw's performance. I mean, on the level of gesture, the small details, the way he positions his body. Can you talk a little bit about what he did? You directed him, like what that whole process was like?
Ben and I got to know each other on passages, so this was like take two. That being said, it's a very different undertaking to internalize this text and also to make visible and visceral the world that he's describing. And that's something I couldn't know until we actually started shooting, that Ben would do so well, that really every word he makes vivid and every person in that he's describing comes alive.
His relationship with Rebecca, the way their kind of bodies kind of move in sync. I mean, that feels so, I don't know, just highly structured. Like, were there rehearsals or, I mean, was there a level of improvisation here or?
Well, there's no textual improvisation because it's all, and for Ben, the text was like learning jazz, because it was like memorizing something that was very musical by nature, and he had to kind of get the flow of all those things. I don't rehearse by choice, by strategy. Before I start shooting, I do block, and I obviously can think about the image in a very direct way. But I really want the operation of shooting to be emotionally discovered in the process of production. It was interesting because I had made that decision to make this film, as I've made my other films, without rehearsing. And on the first day of shooting, I thought, uh-oh, this is a mistake, because Ben had memorized the 55 pages of text, but he had not totally internalized it. And it was a little bit like not quite fluid. And I thought, well, how is he going to learn that overnight? And what I did is the next morning, I gave him about an hour and a half in the morning to run those days' lines with a PA. And somehow that became like a dress rehearsal for him before he actually performed it on the stage in front of the camera. By day 2 of shooting, he was just almost always in the words that he was saying. I mean, really, really, there's something complete about what he's doing. I will also say this is the first time I've ever worked with actors that I've asked to do accents before. Both of them are British. And that was actually freeing for me, because it became immediately something that was quite theatrical. It wasn't realism, because they're actually performing and constructing characters in front of you. They're also not Peter and Linda. So the idea of construction and the process of doing that became interesting to me.
This most recent viewing, my eyes sort of gravitated to all the beautiful furniture and details in the set decoration. How did you go about choosing these objects?
Linda gave us a bunch of home photographs, like candid photographs of her apartment, which was on 94th Street on the east side. I gave those to Stephen Phelps, who's the wonderful production designer who had done Honora the year before and just has a really lively way of looking at color and space and period in this case. So there are a few things, like the candelabra that they light is directly from a photograph of Linda's, or there's a grandfather clock on a wall that Linda had. The spider plants were very much part of Linda's apartment in 1974. So there were elements that were from that were thought of because of these photographs, but ultimately we were also making spaces that we thought would look good in cinema. So we used a lot of grass cloth and richly colored backdrops to give shape to the cinematic portraiture.
I'm wondering what Linda's response to the film was, and if anyone else within their milieu that knew either of them had the opportunity to see the film.
Linda and I and Rebecca, I think we text 3 times today. So we're really in it with each other in a beautiful way. I think this has been a gift for her. I don't think she expected at 91 to have this kind of attention, and really attention to a certain kind of art form that she created. She had written a book in '69 called Talk, which was also based on transcripts of conversations between her and a number of friends one summer in Fire Island. So it's really like her art form, the transcripted kind of narrative. So I think that, and also she still loves Peter like he is like right next to her. So I think being able to share that love has been very meaningful.
So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
you know,